First is the high cost of housing. And this has really put a lot of people under a lot of economic pressure. You know, we're very familiar with the 90s generation in China and how sensitive they are to the cost of housing in Beijing or Shanghai. But the 90s generation in Hong Kong, their situation is far worse. To some extent, this problem is a holdover from the British years. There was a certain amount of continuity in terms of the new political system that was put in place, where you had very powerful business interests, real estate developers who continued to exert too much influence on Hong Kong politics and policymaking. A lot of people in Hong Kong are also angry because there's been no substantial government policy to help rectify this problem. I think Hong Kongers in the past, maybe not all of them, but quite a number of them, used to feel kind of superior to the mainland, right? And they used to go to Shenzhen and enjoy cheap massage and cheap dinner and cheap products, right? And they have lost that economic power. They've lost that sense of being the better China. Sometimes people have a very visceral or emotional reason why they're upset, but underneath that reason is going to be something more substantial. So maybe the reason why people are angry now has to do with some sort of ideological narrative, or they're framing it as an ideological narrative. But what they're really upset maybe about it is something that's much more substantive, like the high cost of living. Political distrust is something that is more caused by these economic concerns, at the same time with some uncertainty about the future, what happens after the 50 years of the Basic Law. And furthermore, there's some pressures placed on Hong Kong. You know, Hong Kong is supposed to be the role model of one country, two systems. So there's a lot of international pressures to maybe undermine that role model, especially maybe some forces from Taiwan. This double standard does not begin with Hong Kong. Hong Kong is just another story that Western media has latched onto. And I wrote a paper several years ago where I talked about what I called the new yellow journalism, and how this was a trend in Western media, particularly in the United States, where they have very negative depictions of China. So this is a long-standing problem. And so any new event that comes up, it gets fed into this negative narrative, right? And it's always sort of one-sided. Anytime that Washington gets involved in discussions with human rights, it tends to hold people to a double standard. It holds people to standards that it doesn't ultimately hold itself. I don't think we can always trust the United States to take an even-handed approach to discussing those problems, because the United States often has its own human rights problems, both at home and abroad.